it's such a hard cycle. And it is, I think, made so much harder by the fact that like nobody talks about it. So there's not a lot of people you can turn to. I think I had like one friend who I knew had one that I could like chat with a bit. But it just, it is a weird thing where I now like make an extra effort to like talk to friends about it, particularly friends who are like, trying to get pregnant or thinking about getting pregnant, of like, it's not always easy.
So I am no longer a coffee drinker. Coffee is something I gave up in revamping my diet for my fertility health, which is very hard to do. But luckily, I found something amazing to replace it with, and that's my morning matcha that I use Kuli Moringa for. It gives me that same ritualistic feeling of having something warm in my hands in the morning without the caffeine. And I have loved having that as a replacement for my coffee. I love this product so much. It is delicious. And I honestly don't miss my coffee. So if you want an opportunity to check out Kuli Moringa, you can use our code QTC25 for 25% off your first purchase.
I'm so excited to have our next guest here, Lisa Curtis, CEO and founder of Kuli Foods. I found your products before I found you, and I'm so excited to have you here because I am such a huge fan of your products. And for me, they were like life-changing in terms of just my diet and lifestyle after miscarriage. That's how I found your product. It was recommended to me when I started working with a dietitian and hormone specialist. So I'm a huge fan of what you built and what you provide for people. So I'm so excited to have you here on Quiet the Clock.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited. Well, one of the things I want to talk about first is just your personal journey, because one of the things we do talk about here on Law and like we like to celebrate and normalize is sort of like unconventional paths and kind of following passions and not making decisions based on, narratives of what we should do or what we're expected to do. So you have quite the journey. So I'd love for you to start there because I think it's inspiring for other people to hear.
Yeah, so I, had a very clear life plan, and it totally changed. And so had no idea I'd be doing what I did today. But after college, I joined the Peace Corps, and I was a volunteer in Niger, West Africa. So if you can imagine, like a rural village, no electricity, no running water, not a lot of healthy food. And as a vegetarian, I found myself just feeling really tired and weak off of eating mostly carbs every day.
Mhm.
And so asked some of the women in my village, what can I eat to give me more energy, more protein, more vitamins? And they literally pulled these leaves off a tree and mixed them into this popular local snack and said, here, eat this Kuli Moringa. Kuli, the name of the snack, Moringa, the name of the tree. They're like, it'll make you feel better. It'll like cure everything you're talking about. And I was like, I've never heard of this, like tree leaves, what is that? But trusted these women. So I started eating it and had the most transformational impact on my health that I've ever had. So it was super incredible. And I was like, how do I get more people to use this plant? First just thinking about how to get more people locally. And the thing they wanted was a way to sell it in the US. So I got back to the US and just became obsessed with Moringa, obsessed with how do you have these amazing climate smart community grown crops? They're so nutritious in other parts of the world. And how do you connect that to US consumers in a way that's like equitable and sustainable and sort of like, brings value and nutrition to everyone. So it's been over a decade now. And that's still what I'm doing. That's Kuli sells Moringa and other superfoods in the form of wellness powders and gummies in about 11,000 stores.
Yeah, I want to get to maybe later in our conversation, just more specifically about the products and what sort of different things you're offering. What was your life plan before you had this moment where, and I love this, like I hear so many stories like this that like our paths change based on a personal experience. So you literally was just seeking something out for yourself to help you feel better and have more energy. Lo and behold, it becomes your whole life's work.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was just like, climate activist, like a very sort of anti-business and, kind of the college California way. So I didn't really imagine myself like starting a business ever. Always imagined being more in the nonprofit, maybe the international development space. But, I think what I started to realize is, no market, no mission. Like these women aren't going to grow a crop that they can't sell. And so if I want them to grow more of it and use more of it, the best way to do that is to help them sell some of it, and help create a market. So we still live and die by that, like no market, no mission, because I think I can get caught up of like, oh, we have to be doing all these other things. We have to give all our profits back and, do everything. And it's like, well, yes, we do need to do as much social good as we can. And we also need to make sure that we exist in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years.
Yeah. Wow. Had you kind of understood, and I have learned this, through my own fertility journey, just the healing power of food. Were you surprised how transformative it was?
I was really surprised. I mean, I think as a vegetarian, you have to pay a little bit more attention to what you eat and be a little more intentional of like, oh, I'm eating this to get the right protein and, blending my beans and rice together, to get all the essential amino acids. But I hadn't really realized just all these different plants from Moringa to maca, which is used a lot in fertility, something I used as well. And all, yeah, there's so many amazing plants that have these incredible properties that I think sometimes in the Western world, we reach for a pill bottle instead of a plant, and we should be looking at plants first.
Yeah, I've definitely been learning that. And as someone that was conscious of what I was eating and healthy, I've learned so much after my fertility journey. Like, well, I'm still in it, but just about the power of food. So I have your products every day. What has entrepreneurship been like for you? I think what can come up for a lot of women or people that are feeling stuck in careers they don't like. There's a lot of fear in trying something different. And so I'm curious, like how just embarked on this journey. It's very courageous. It's obviously very different. It was not what you had planned on doing. And how did you kind of move through maybe some fears or doubts or uncertainties that came up?
Yeah, I mean it's hard, right? Like especially coming out of the Peace Corps, I literally had $2,000 in my bank account. It wasn't like a big runway, so to speak. And so as I was starting Kuli in the background, I had a day job. I worked at a solar company. I, was very happy there. And I think my parents, when I told them I was quitting my job to go start this, sort of like Peace Corps dream, they're like, why? You like your job. You're good at it. You get paid money. Like, why are you going to go, try to sell a earthy green plant that nobody's ever heard of? And so there's definitely a lot of fear and a lot of doubt. And I think the thing that I kept telling myself is like, if I don't at least try, I'm gonna regret it. I don't want to be on my deathbed being like, oh, I had this wonderful career, but like I could have tried. I could have gone, got on a limb and just seen what happened. And I think I always just like had in my mind, like, worst case scenario, like I fail and I have a good story and like feel good about having tried. And I think the thing that like sort of locked it in for me is I felt very committed to the women I'd worked with in Peace Corps and very committed to like seeing this idea through. And so that was something that just like, it just kept coming back to me. And I'm like, this idea isn't going away. I gotta see if there's something here.
Yet I have to imagine just thing the benefit you experienced from it, just and knowing that you could give that to other people and have people learn about these plants and it also being tied to the women and making it profitable. And I just imagine that's probably also something that helped you keep moving forward and pushing forward because it is really hard to be an entrepreneur and try new things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. For me, it's all about having a bigger purpose and, being able to like go and visit some of our farmers is literally the best thing ever. Like we do two really big supplier trips a year, so I probably spend like around 20 days in the field and just kind of like
Oh,
meeting
amazing.
with suppliers, and it just like hearing the impact firsthand is so powerful, and small things like, we gave a $5,000 grant to one of our partners in Uganda, and they used it to install rainwater harvesting systems in the school because kids were spending like 2 hours a day collecting water for their school instead of studying. And it's like that's
Oh, it's
not a
amazing.
ton of money to like change the lives of like the 600 kids that are in that school.
Wow.
So it's little stuff like that that I'm like, I feel really lucky that I have this kind of purpose
Oh
behind
my
what we're
gosh, that
doing.
is so incredible. Yeah, again, I just, a lot of the guests that I've had on this podcast are doing such incredible things, purpose driven, mission driven, and born out of their own, like their own experience. I'm curious, like, how surprised was the community that you're like, you actually went and did the thing? Like, you went and made this a business and made this profitable and I brought this to the United States.
Yeah, they were, I think, very surprised and very excited. And, it was really cool. In 2018, I got the chance to go back to my same Peace Corps village as part of this big USAID grant that we had gotten to like help them sort of scale up what they were doing with Moringa. And it was just so cool to be like they're shocked that I came back, because I think they often see people come and people make big promises, and it's rare that folks actually come back.
Mhm. Did, did you feel like as you're, yeah, I mean, I think that's just so incredible. Did you think like as you're doing this entrepreneurial journey, are you watching other friends do more traditional jobs or being successful in other ways? Did any kind of comparison come up that like, people are on this path and I'm kind of on this path over here, grinding it out and figuring out this business?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think living in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, you see so many people go into tech and just like make stupid money. It's like, oh yeah, you can afford all these like nice cars and houses and vacations because you get paid an insane amount of money to work in technology. And just like the economics of food are never going to be that. Even if we're wildly successful, it's not going to be the same. And so I think there is definitely a financial trade-off. But to me, it's worth it because I still wake up and I'm like, wow, somebody's paying me to do this. Like that's the thing that I think about.
Yeah. I love, and then the gratitude for being, I imagine such gratitude for being able to do what you do every day. I love what you said about, I kind of live by the same thing of not having regrets and just being willing to try. Because my journey was a lot of trying until I figured out what I want to do. And um, is there anything you could offer people listening who are afraid to try or are kind of, because for me, the trying, you always learn something, like you said too. Even if you fail, there's a story or there's a lesson or there's something valuable to take from it. But I think I see this a lot in my work as a therapist that there's just so much fear, and then people remain so stuck, and then time is passing, and then they're feeling the pressure of that time. And so I'm curious for you if there's anything besides like I didn't want to regret it that kept you willing to try.
For me, it's all about breaking it down into like the little sub steps. I think sometimes people like think about starting an organization, be that, company, nonprofit, venture of some sort, as like, oh, this big thing, like tomorrow I have to quit my day job and I have to like focus all my energy on it. And for me, it was really, really kind of a process of like, how do I figure out what are like the little milestones that we can take now that can lead to this bigger idea. So specifically, like I kept my day job for a while and I was like making product by hand in a commercial kitchen, spending like, if you can imagine, all day Saturday making this product,
Oh my
all day
God.
Sunday selling and just like testing it out at the farmer's market and trying to understand like, what do people like? What do they not like? Why are they buying it? What's our conversion rate from sampling to sale? which was actually incredible data. Like that's what got us into Whole Foods, was having, 500 samples. Basically, we did like, consumer testing, so to speak, with like 500 people
Wow.
at these farmers markets, and being able to take that data over there. But then that was kind of thing one that I was like, okay, we're getting a good conversion rate, we're getting good feedback, like that's a positive sign. And then the next one was like, okay, will people put money behind this idea, like in the form of a crowdfunding campaign? Like, can we get enough money to do our first manufacturing run? And we did this big Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign, and like the first couple people to put money in were like friends and family, but then we got like 800 people from like 50 different countries. It was wild.
Wow. That's
So that was
incredible.
kind of a sign to me, like, okay, this idea has resonance beyond just like, my sister. So it was, I think it was those little steps that like started to lead to, okay, now I feel more confident this idea's been validated and I can make the bigger step.
I love that, breaking it down, because I think we can get so overwhelmed. Again, I've seen this with my clients and even in my own life of like sort of the outcome, like how do I get to the outcome? I want the outcome now. And instead of like, and that leaves us so stuck because then we don't think about like what is the process or what are the small steps to get me there. So I love the idea
Yeah,
of breaking it down. I think it makes it more doable, so much less overwhelming, and just, possible.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree.
Okay, so I'm curious if you could share more, because I have found this so helpful for my fertility journey, for my own health journey. And I really have started to look at my fertility journey as more of like sort of this awakening to my overall health. So can you share some of the products that you have? Because I'm so grateful. You guys have sent me so many great things. But I'd love for you to share more here about some of the products that you guys offer.
Yeah. So, Moringa was the first superfood that I got hooked on. And I think from like an energy perspective, just like protein, micronutrients, it's an incredible green. So we sell it as a powder, and then we also sell it in a variety of blends and bars. Kind of, and gummies, you can sort of pick
Yeah.
which format you like. Um, and then we have some blends with some other really cool ingredients. So baobab is another really interesting one that not a lot of folks have heard about, but everyone has seen it in The Lion King. It's like that, tree that Rafiki hangs out in with those huge fruits. And inside of those fruits is this amazing powder that's incredible for gut health, really
Mm.
high in prebiotic fiber. So we have some blends and gummies with that as well. And then we do have, kind of like just try to have like a lineup of like what do you need? Is it you need like a mood boost? We have a blend for that. Do you need like some energy? We've got like a green power blend for that. Do you need gut health? Do you need, like thyroid regulation is a really big one, and
Mm.
iodine. So our Marine Glow is amazing for that. It also, I actually give both that one and the citrus C to my kids. They love to turn their yogurt like pink and blue.
Oh,
So
great idea. I'm going to do that with my son.
yeah, it's really fun for that. It's like, kind of like a little magic experiment in the morning. But really great. The citrus C has 100% of your vitamin C, all from real fruit and no sugar, just like very, very
Mm.
real ingredients. So kind of like a natural version of emergency. So nice for preschool colds. And then, yeah, like I said, the Marine Glow has 100% of your iodine, great for thyroid regulation. And it's all sort of like kelp and seaweed, loose spirulina, some really cool ingredients in there.
It's so amazing to me because I started reading about, well, I found moringa through my dietitian hormone specialist as I started using it as a replacement for coffee because she wanted me
Yeah.
to eliminate coffee. So, and I love my coffee every morning, and it was hard to give that up. Actually, I will say it wasn't hard to give it up because I replaced it with the moringa, and she gave me a cool little recipe to do with it. And I loved it. And I just still had my ritual of like something hot in a cup, drinking it. But it also felt good knowing like I was putting something really good into my body.
Yeah, like deeply nourishing way to start your morning. And we've had so many people make a like little moringa latte with our moringa powder that we just launched a line of lattes. So you
Okay.
can now, I
Oh,
don't think you've tried this because it just launched a few weeks ago, but we have
okay.
a moringa matcha latte with lion's mane in it to help enhance focus. And you get, all this just like amazing energy. The matcha it's like a relatively small amount, so it's still very, very low caffeine, but you get like a nice boost of energy and focus.
Oh my God. Is that in Whole Foods now?
It is in Sprouts right now and launching it with Whole Foods in a couple months in January.
Okay. I
Also
will for
Amazon, our website, all that.
okay.
Yeah.
I will be for sure on the lookout for that. Yeah, so I've been reading about all of these ingredients and it can be overwhelming. So I love your products because everything, it's so easy. Like I do a lot of the gummies because you can just like, even if you're busy, you're popping them in and you're putting something good in your body.
Yeah, totally. And I will say, for like postpartum, Moringa is used and recommended very widely by a lot of lactation consultants because
Mm.
it's so great for enhancing milk production. So we have a lot of new moms that are really big into the gummies, the bars, I would eat them. They would be my like 2 a.m. breastfeeding snack of just like cramming bars in my mouth. But it really does have an amazing impact on milk production. And there's actually some pretty nice clinical trials behind that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing because women breastfeeding is so hard and when your supply is not there, it's stressful in a lot of ways, but also when your supply is not there, it's so stressful.
It's the most stressful. Yes, I've done it quite a bit. I'm now through that phase, but it is hard.
Yeah. Were there points in building this company where, and I think this applies to a lot of other things in life, where it was hard to stay patient. Like you have this vision for it, how amazing these products are, the health benefits of these products, and you kind of just want to see it to market and see it out there for everybody to buy and consume. Were there moments where just like it was hard to stay patient in the process of success and visibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing that's so interesting is I feel like I spent like the first 5 years being like, we need to grow bigger, we need to grow bigger faster. Like, why aren't we big enough? And now I look back and I'm like, man, remember the days when we could just like change the product formula like one day to another and like do all that testing like so fast, rapid feedback. Where now it's like we have to produce like 100,000 units at a time versus like, oh, remember when we made like 20 bars in a commercial kitchen and could like test
Kitchen on a
that.
Saturday.
So I think there's a lot of just like, people tend to lament where they are without seeing the benefits. And I think
Yeah.
there's something beautiful in small, there's something really beautiful in like steady growth. Like I think just the venture capital landscape has changed a lot, and it's been really interesting. A lot of our investors for a while were like, grow faster, spend more money, like grow, 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 spend money to grow. And that's just not, it's not really like who I am. I'm like, no, we're going to spend money wisely. We're going to like spend it where we think it makes sense. We're not going to spend money just to like spend money. And we actually do want to build a sustainable and profitable business. And now they're all like, oh, I'm so glad you're not running out of money. Like, so glad that you've built a sustainable business, because everyone else in their portfolio is like desperate and running out of cash. So yeah, I think stick to your guns.
Yeah, that was something my dad had always said to me is that manage your growth, don't grow too fast. So
Yeah.
that resonates completely. I love what you said too about, being in present day where things are maybe bigger and looking back of like, oh, but wasn't that so great when we were doing the bars in the kitchen? And I think that's such an amazing point because I think often whatever is we're desiring or we're hoping for, we're so focused there. We can't wait to get there, and we forget the value of where we are now and like gratitude for those moments, even those harder moments. I've had that experience myself. It's like whatever the destination or the goal is, once I get there, it's like, oh, but man, it was so great when it was, for example, when I was single and wanting to meet somebody. And then I meet my partner and I'm lamenting and being single and wanting to meet somebody and lonely and all these things. And then I meet the partner and I'm like, oh man, remember when I could just like go out whenever I wanted or just to have the TV to myself, and I think you make such a valuable point of like being grateful in the moment for where we're at, seeing the value of like the small steps, the progress, whether it's slower than you imagined or wanted.
Yeah, no, I think it's easy to say and very hard to do.
Very hard to do. Very hard to do. I think it's important to be sort of like very mindful and thoughtful of that. And that takes work and intention to ground in that. I wanted to switch gears a little bit because I know you also have a fertility story. I don't know your fertility story, but if you're comfortable, I would love for you to share it here.
Yeah, happy to. And I think, what you're doing and sharing and normalizing these stories is so, so important. So I had, an interesting journey. I think it all worked out in the end, but definitely we were sort of trying to get pregnant in 2018 and like took a very long time, finally got pregnant, only to sort of go to the doctor for the checkup and be like, oh, there's no heartbeat, which is just crushing to kind of get that far along and think that you were having a kid and then not.
Yeah. How long were you, when you say long time, like how long were you trying?
So we ended up trying for about a year.
Okay.
Both kids. So,
okay.
And had miscarriages before both kids. Ugh. So it was kind of just a wild, like, well, we know it works sometimes and we're not sure what, and, tried a bunch of different things. And I think kind of to the point earlier for us, it was just a little bit of a patience of like, just kind of like taking time. And I think, looking back on it, probably a big element of stress as well. And, had one of kind of my doctors and just like talk about like when your body gets so stressed, when you're like so anxious to make this happen, like that doesn't create an environment where it's likely to happen. And so trying to just like relax a little bit more of like, if it happens, it happens. And yeah, ended up being kind of crazy where I got pregnant. And then the day I was going to tell my team when I kind of hit that, like, out of the first trimester was the day that instead I told them we were going into lockdown because of COVID. March 2020. Yeah. And so then had this just kind of wild experience of my first pregnancy being entirely during COVID and literally no one knowing that I was pregnant. And I ended up leaning into that a little bit because I had heard so many stories of other female founder CEOs just like having, weird experiences where you go into a sales meeting and instead of talking about the business, the whole sales meeting is like, oh, are you having a kid? Like, where are you going to take time off? It's just like in a way that is not great. And certainly from an investor and fundraising standpoint, like then having lots of questions around like, well, who's going to be there in your absence? How is the business going to survive? And so it was fascinating to not have anyone know. Basically didn't tell really anyone on our team or board until I was like 8 months.
I have so many questions. I had a similar experience. I got pregnant in I knew if I found I was pregnant October 2020. I'm like, 20, yeah. So my whole business therapy practice was virtual at the time. So like, you're doing therapy like this and you can only see top up. So I also had the opportunity to wait longer than I would have if I was in person with clients. And that was important to me because I wanted to get past like certain milestones and make sure everything was okay before sharing. But that wouldn't have been really an option for me if I was still in person with people. So you have the miscarriage, and then the pregnancy after that is the COVID pregnancy.
Yeah. So my daughter was born September 2020.
Okay. How was it for you? Because I have thought about this. Post miscarriage, to go to those appointments. I'm imagining your partner couldn't go with you to those appointments, or were.
So yeah, I mean he couldn't go to most of them. Like it was in that like wild time where there were like conversations like, oh, in New York, they're not even letting partners like be in the hospital room during labor. And here he's like, do you want to do a home birth? And I was like, no, I do not want to do a home birth. Like I want all of the medical care that the hospital down the street has. Like I really like my doctor. And you know, not dissing home births, but that was kind of the route I wanted. And we ended up, you know, could both of us be there, but had also just like a lot of unnecessary sort of like COVID challenges where I got to the hospital and I was like throwing up because I was in labor, and they were like, oh, are you throwing up because of COVID? So no one would see me. So I had like sat in this like, you know, in the like sort of room by myself. Like we were there for hours. And there's like somebody came in like full hazmat suit to like take a COVID test. And like, no, I didn't have COVID. But then it just took so long to get admitted and get through it. And, you know, once we were there and I got the epidural that I wanted, like it was all okay. But that was like all I wanted. I was like, I just want an epidural. Like some women want natural home births and like power to them. And I really just wanted an epidural. Yeah. And yeah, so it ended up being fine, but it was definitely felt like very dramatic at the time. And then it was just a really kind of weird time to have a new baby because we couldn't introduce her to most people. So it was, you know, it's sort of just like us and our baby and like the couple people. Like my parents were in our bubble, and like my sisters were sort of in and out of our bubble. And there are definitely silver linings of like both my husband and I now travel a ton for work. And there was no traveling, and there were no like social events that we felt like we were missing. We were just like at home, hanging out with the baby. And, you know, thankfully we live in California and we are like big walkers, hikers. And so we just started doing like walks, like long walks, like would spend like 2 hours a day, like walking, like sometimes with friends who would like, you know, stand a little bit far away.
For so many people being able to get out and do their walks. Yeah.
Just walking. Yeah. It was. So I think that's kind of how we kept from being like totally lonely and just like upset with our, you know, now we're at home, just the two of us with a newborn kind of thing.
Yeah. How was it for you to sort of navigate all the emotions after miscarriage and stay hopeful and kind of regroup from that? I mean, I've experienced that same thing. Like I have had two miscarriages similar to you. And so it's such a hard cycle.
It's such a hard cycle. And it is, I think, made so much harder by the fact that like nobody talks about it. So there's not a lot of people you can turn to. I think I had like one friend who I knew had one that I could like chat with a bit. But it just, you know, it is a weird thing where I now like make an extra effort to like talk to friends about it, particularly friends who are like, you know, trying to get pregnant or thinking about getting pregnant, of like, you know, it's not always easy. Like it's not the like middle school textbook, like you have sex and baby will come.
Yeah. Exactly. Like fear is like instilled of like, if you have sex, you'll be pregnant, and then you try and get pregnant. And it's actually, I love that you share that message, because I fortunately got pregnant very easily with my son. So I was sort of like blind to all of this. I mean, I knew a little bit about, I froze my egg at 37. So I knew a little bit like about fertility, but going into secondary infertility, I was like, now I'm like, how did you even get pregnant with my son? I'm like, what? Like, this is really, so I agree with you. I think the message really needs to be, it can be hard. It can be really hard. It's not as easy as we're told it is.
It's absolutely not. And I also think people don't talk enough about like postpartum depression as well. Like I think that is a big thing that I'm like, oh, I'm a happy person. Like I've never had depression. And then like, I think the combination of like COVID and just like, all the things that it's just like really sad, like, in those first few months. And it's like, okay, this is normal. Like you got to understand, like there's a lot happening. There's a lot of hormones.
I think that's what's so unfortunate, and sort of a lot of, the messaging I want to be spreading with this narrative, not just in relation to fertility, just normalizing other paths, normalizing other timelines. There's just this expectation that like certain things happen at certain times, and if they don't, then something is wrong with you, or you must have this kind of career path and it must look like this. So I love to dismantle those narratives and create other messages that like, this timeline is great, that timeline is great, this type of career is great, as long as it's great for you. I had a conversation with a client, a session today actually, where she's pregnant and she's depressed, and she feels so guilty and so much shame about being depressed. I'm like, listen, we're sold the story that once you get pregnant, it should be so amazing and great and celebratory, and that's the only thing that you should be feeling. And like, that's kind of bullshit, because for some people it's not that. And so she's sitting in all of this like shame and guilt and really hard feelings because she's not over the moon, because we're told we're supposed to be over the moon.
I hated being pregnant. I like to each their own, right? Like some people love it. And for me, I was just like, I'm just like uncomfortable and unwieldy. And like, I understand this is the process to get the thing that I want, but like, I've got a lot of technology. Like why is it still so challenging?
Yeah. I just think it speaks to like, all things are possible, and there's not one thing that is true. There's not one way that you should feel about things. I'm so sorry you've had that experience. I mean, I know how awful it can be. I love that you're sort of sharing your experience with others, because I think it helps a lot. I think it helps manage expectations. I think it helps normalize things. So it's amazing to kind of pay that forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I think it is important for folks to hear it that like it can happen at any age too. Like I was 30. So it wasn't, like it's very normal, I think, in all stages of life to have challenges.
Yeah, that's so important to share. Yeah, we get so caught up on the age thing, whether it be like if you're younger, your fertility's fine, or if like you're this age, you're too old and you're like falling off the fertility cliff. So I love that you shared that. How did you use your products to support you through pregnancy, postpartum? How was that helpful? I know you mentioned sort of for breastfeeding, but other things that you found helpful?
I mean, before that, like during pregnancy, like I was very constipated, like just all of the time. And, they were telling me like, take Miralax, take all this stuff. And it's like, what if I just take a little more Moringa? Like Moringa it's very high in fiber. A lot of people use it for kind of like keeping yourself regular. Used it quite a bit for that. So that was really helpful. And then just the energy without caffeine, I think that's a really key thing, where I'd have like, my Moringa in the morning. Generally, I do it in like a superfood oatmeal with like some nut butter and some cinnamon.
Do you guys share like recipes and stuff on your website?
Yeah, we've got tons of recipes on our website. I often tell people like Moringa tastes kind of earthy and green, so if you can find other like complementary flavors, so like cinnamon has a nice earthiness to it, they pair really well, like cumin. And then things like guacamole or like, matcha, kind of things your mind already expects to taste kind of green, do pretty good. And then, I would also have my like matcha latte, or not my matcha, sorry, my Moringa latte in the afternoon as like a little pick me up, because, you get so tired. Like I was like napping in the middle of the day all the time. It's just something to like keep me going when I really needed to get through stuff.
Yeah. And again, knowing like if you're pregnant, like, not only you're putting something in your body that's good for you, but also for your baby.
Yes, exactly. Getting all those micronutrients and the phytonutrients in particular. So
I love that you make it so your products make it so easy to do that. I think if you're going through any type of fertility journey or you're just stressed or have a lot going on, like it can be really overwhelming to think about what should I make? How do I make sure I'm getting enough this? How do I make sure I'm getting enough that? I know I got like very overwhelmed by that in the beginning before I found all your products. And it's just another stressor on top of all the other stressors.
Right. There's so many stressors. I am so grateful that we could help.
Oh, yeah, I'm so grateful. One last thing before we wrap up, because we were sharing about this before we started recording, and in sort of in lieu of like normalizing and having better narratives that are more realistic. I love this post you put up about motherhood and how hard motherhood can be. And you're an entrepreneur, you're a mom of two, you're a very busy person. And I just love for you to speak to that a little bit because it really resonated with me. Because there's oftentimes I'm like, am I doing something wrong here? Like I have a babysitter, I have this help. I'm so stressed. I'm so behind. Like, am I doing something wrong? So I really appreciated that post because it's like, okay, I'm not alone here.
Totally. Yeah. So it was something I put online around Mother's Day because I often find Mother's Day to be a little triggering in the sense that like, yes, it's amazing to like spend a day celebrating mom and doing all these nice things for mom. But like we also often really undervalue women in terms of, women still do the majority of the domestic chores, still do the majority of like unpaid childcare, and we make, cents on the dollar for what men make. So there's so much in terms of like, well, what does it mean to like honor moms and parents year round? And I think for me, I think a lot about like, I have all of the help in the world. Like we have a preschool down the street, we have super involved grandparents, we have a nanny. And yet, like, we struggle so much. Like, my husband and I, to like both of us have, pretty demanding jobs, pretty demanding work schedules, travel schedules, and like trying to balance two kids, it can feel impossible. There are often days when we're like, how does everyone else do this? Like, how do people that like can't, pay for a nanny to like cover, like what is the rest of the world doing? Are we doing something wrong? But I think it just, I really believe that our society is not set up to really support two working parents. And that, as an employer now, like one of my big sort of like ethos is like, bring your whole self to work. Like if you have a sick kid who is like, sitting behind you playing on their iPad and you have to like jump, like do it, like do whatever you need to do whatever helps you be your best and like help us understand like what flexibility you need.
Yeah, it's hard. Again, that post made me feel like I'm not alone because I'm like, I have a decently flexible work schedule that, I mean, I can create my own schedule. We have help. And I'm just like, Rob and I always look at it. So like, what are we doing wrong? We're doing something wrong. So we're not the only ones. As you're talking, it sparked one last question I wanted to ask you and sort of what you're saying of, mothers doing a lot, maybe not being supported enough. One frustration that is so reoccurring, especially in the fertility space, is just how little we know about our health, how little women's health is like not studied enough, not focused on enough. I'm just curious if you've had that similar frustration going through your fertility journey that like you didn't know enough, you were misinformed. Why didn't I know more? Maybe you had to advocate harder for yourself than you should have to.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things that I was like, nobody ever told me this. Like, I read the book Taking Control of Your Fertility, and like you learn so much about like, oh, these are the signs that like you're in ovulation stage and like this is what to look for. And I'm like, why would like no doctor ever tell me this? Like your body sends very clear signals and like we don't tell women to look for them. So it's so many little things like that where it's just like, oh, like I need to understand my body better and understand like the different phases and, sort of the hormones and like what it, when maybe I need to like give myself a break because it's like, oh, this is my like high stress, like couple days, like high anxiety days. Like maybe it's good to like take a break, take a breather, you know, like don't go into like a really important work meeting if I can avoid it on that day, because I'm probably not going to come off the way I want to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important to like tune it. You're right. Like I learned so much about my cycle and ovulation. I had zero, I'm 43 years old. Like I had zero idea before this secondary infertility. And I froze my eggs and I had a baby, and there's still so much I'm continuing to learn. I actually have one more question, because this is something that sort of fascinated me, that is getting more clear to me as I go through my fertility journey and learn more about nutrition and health and these things. And you said this earlier about instead of a pill, try a plant. And have you experienced any pushback maybe from people that are more Western medical mindset of like, this stuff can't work, or you do need the pill? And I'm curious to hear about that, because I feel like I'm kind of way more lean out towards sort of like holistic healing and healing through nutrition and food. And I'm curious if you've, along your journey of building this company, have had pushback where people are like, we need the pills, we need the...
It's certainly, I mean, I think, you know, it's come up in a few different ways. Like when I was trying to get pregnant, like, you know, a friend who's very in the holistic world was like, oh, you have to try maca powder. And I like asked my doctor, they're like, oh, you know, nothing's been proven, nothing's been studied. Like, we don't know if it's safe. And I like did all this research, and I was like, well, but it's been used all over the world for a very long time for this exact purpose. Like, I think it's fine. And certainly, you know, with Moringa and with our products, like, particularly because a lot of these plants are sourced from the tropics, and, you know, a lot of the funding in the US from a scientific standpoint goes to like US grown crops. There's not a lot of like American studies or American trials. And so we often will have, you know, folks ask their doctors like, oh, can I take Moringa while breastfeeding? Their doctors will be like, oh, well, I don't know. Like, you know, I don't see like, oh yeah, I guess there were like, you know, clinical trials in the Philippines and India and like all these other places, but there hasn't been anything in the US. Like, we don't know, maybe. Which I'm like, come on, like, this is like literally the like clinically proven best herb for breastfeeding. And we have women being like, oh, my doctor says like, I don't know if it's safe. So it is very tricky, I think, for, you know, folks to like understand just like plants, because there's not a company making a ton of money off of, you know, like just Moringa powder, just maca powder, enough that you can like patent it and commercialize it and like do a ton of commercial like clinical trials here in the US. Like, it's not ownable in the same way like a pill or like a patented formula is. And so that's why I think often when we ask traditionally trained doctors, they tend to say like, well, I don't know, might not be safe.
I know. And I have found that I've had that same experience where I've asked my doctor about certain things that were recommended from like more of a functional medicine or holistic, and she'll say the same. And then I'm like, but they're saying it's good, and she's saying maybe not. And then I'm like, do I take it? Do I not take it? It just creates a lot of confusion.
It is. And it is very confusing.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for being here. Before we wrap up, just tell everybody where they can find your amazing products.
Yeah, so company is Kuli Foods, KuliKuliFoods. That's our website, kulikulifoods.com. You can also find us on Amazon, Whole Foods, Sprouts, some Walmarts, some Costco's, so kind of all over the map. And our website does have a store locator if you would like to find the store closest to you.
Oh my God. Well, congratulations on all the success. Can't wait to keep seeing what you guys do. I'll be on the lookout for the latte. That will be a staple in my household. And I just appreciate you being here and sharing your journey, sharing your fertility journey. I can't thank you enough.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I think it's no secret that I love the Little Words Project's bracelets. I have about 6 or 7 on my arm. Ones that have been given to me, ones I've bought myself. I love giving them as gifts. I think they're so inspirational for me personally. They're nice little reminders throughout my day to have hope, to be, have strength, to be in good energy. I just love the bracelets so much. I love giving them. I love receiving them. And if you want to check them out and you want to give it as a gift or get one for yourself, you can use our code QTC for 15% off your first order.
Hey guys, I'm Beth. Thank you so much for tuning in to Quiet the Clock. If you want to hear more episodes and learn more about how to dismantle societal timelines, live life on your own terms, live life fully and authentically, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and you can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Quiet the Clock Pod. You guys, I'm really excited. We just created all this amazing merch. And so if you're loving the podcast and you want to support our cause and continue to hear amazing episodes, please support us by buying some merch. I am living in these sweatshirts every day. We have a range of colors. We have hoodies, we have mugs, we have hats, we have journals. We have all of the things. And I love having them on because it's just a reminder to quiet the clock, to slow down, to like let life unfold and be happy. So there's meaning and purpose behind wearing it too, which is a nice reminder. So check out our website, quiettheclock.com, to get your merch.